If you remember in class, we spoke about how a function is a relationship between values, where you have one input value related to one output value. And the function in math, it's performing some sort of operation where if you input one value, it does a function and then it outputs another. And remember, we can represent these functions in different ways. We can represent them as a mapping diagram, as a table, a graph, ordered pairs, or even an equation. And what we see here in these examples of these functions is how it's relating one number to another, right? That's what makes it a function. One number is related to another. There's a relationship there. And what we're trying to figure out in this lesson is what are the values of that function? What are the values that we can input into that function and that we can get out of that function? Remember, there's always an input and output to these values, and so to these functions. And so we want to figure out what are those values of any particular function, and how can we learn that from the information that's given to us. And so if a function can be given to us in different ways, we want to figure out how do we determine what are the input and output values, what we call the domain and the range. In this lesson, we'll just be focused on determining the domain and range of a function from a graph. So looking at a graph with these points here and determining what is the domain, what is the range. So a domain of a function are all of the input values. Okay? And so if we look at this XY table here, the X values of a function are our input, and so that is our domain. The range are all of the output values. Okay? So once the function has done its function, what does it output? That is called the range, all of those values. And so the Y values in this table are the range. And so if I'm given a table like this of these values, of these XY values, I can look at all the X's and that's my domain. And I can look at all of the Y's and that's my range. And you can see them here written as ordered pairs. And remember, in an ordered pair, the X comes first and then the Y. And so all of the X's are my domain and all of the Y values are the range. So that's if I was looking at a table. But in this lesson, we'll just be looking at graphs. And so if you're given this coordinate plane here with these different points graphed on it, how can you determine what the domain and the range are? Well, first I'm going to look at, okay, what are the ordered pairs? Okay? What are the ordered pairs of each of those points? And then what are the X values? Those would be my domain, my input. And what are the Y values? That would be the Y, or the range values, the output. So when given a graph, we're going to look at, okay, where are each of those points in the coordinate plane? What is their coordinates? And then our X values will be our domain, and our Y values will be our range. So let's walk through a full example of determining domain and range from a graph, and this is from your notes. So we're given this graph in quadrant 1 of this coordinate plane, and we have these different points indicated here on this graph. And we want to determine what is the domain and range of this function, okay, from this graph. So this is a function. It's relating values, and we see that with the ordered pairs. And so we want to determine what is the domain and what's the range. And we'll do that by finding the coordinates of each of those points. And so we want to do that first, is what are the coordinates of each of those points. So let's start with this first one here. Remember, when finding the coordinates, we look at first the horizontal on the x-axis. Okay, where is it on the x-axis? This one is at 1, okay, right here. And then where is it on the y-axis? It's at 9. And so we would write the coordinate point as 1, 9, because it goes over to 1 on the x-axis and up to 9 on the y-axis. Okay, so 1, 9. Okay, now what is the coordinate point of this one? That's at 3 on the x-axis, and that goes up to 7 on the y-axis. Okay, so it went up over to 3 on the x, up to 7 on the y. And so the coordinate point is 3, 7. Next, this one is at 5, 5. Lower to 5, up to 5. This one is at 7, 3. And this one is at 9, 1. So my first step when given these points, this function of points on the graph, is to determine what are the coordinates of each of them. Okay? Now that I have the coordinates, I can easily determine what's the domain and the range. Because if you remember, what I said is the x values of your coordinates are your domain. Okay? Those are all of the input values. Those are all the numbers that I can put into the function. Okay? And so what are the x values of my function? It's right here, 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 and here, right? That first number. So 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 are all of the x values. And so that's the domain. Okay? That's the domain of this function. Those are all the numbers that I can put into my function. Okay? Remember, putting numbers into the function, it's like this is what I can put into, we talked about the microwave. Okay? It performs a function, right? You can put something in and you get something out that's ready for you to eat. Okay? And so these are all the numbers that I can put into the microwave and it not blow up, right? And it not be a problem. And then the y values are the output, what we call the range. And so all the y values here, are the range, 9, 7, 5, 3, and 1. And you want to make sure that they're matched up, right? This is 1, 9, 1, 9. 3, 7, 3, 7. We're not going to put them in, when they're written like this in a table, we're not going to put them in order from smallest to biggest. Hey, we're going to make sure they're matched up. That's 1, 9, that's 3, 7, that's 5, 5, and you can see that there. Okay. So make sure when you're writing them in a table that you match them up like that. All right, and so that is the range. All the y values are the range. And so those are all the numbers that we can get out of our function, right? When we put a 1 into our function, we get out a 9. When we put a 3 into our function, we get out a 7. Now we'll look more at later at kind of like, hey, what do we mean by putting in and getting out of the function? But that's kind of a way you can think about the relationship between these numbers. If I put one of these numbers in, I get out one of these others. Okay? And so that's how you're going to determine the domain and range of a function from a graph. Looking at the points, identify what the coordinates are. And then you'll write all of your x values as your domain, and then you'll match up all of your y values for your range.